Warning, the following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
What's going on, nerds? Welcome to my new video series, Modern versus Retro. Oh, I'm wearing the wrong t-shirt. That's better. Yeah, so this video series is going to be us looking at modern and retro versions of the same franchise of a video game and finding out what actually is the best, modern gaming or retro gaming. We will look at certain categories such as gameplay, graphics, sound and music, storyline, and an overall assessment of which game was better. So the first franchise of games we're going to be looking at is Friday the 13th, as you can see from my lovely t-shirt. So we're going to be looking at which one was better, the Nintendo Entertainment System version of Friday the 13th or the Xbox One version. Okay, let's jump straight into the episode after this intro. Okay, for those of you that don't know, Friday the 13th is actually originally a movie series, a horror movie franchise. Started in the early 80s and spawned many, many sequels. Each one getting more and more ridiculous as it went along, but I still love them all. It's from the slasher genre of horror movies, and I cannot understate to you guys just how much I love Friday the 13th. As a kid growing up, I watched these movies when I wasn't supposed to. I was about 8 years old and I was watching Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, all these types of films. Really shouldn't have been, and I absolutely loved them. These sorts of films, Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees, they are very dear to me and my growing up. So it made sense to me to start this video series off by comparing the two games from this franchise. So the movies follow the exploits of a bunch of horny teenagers at Camp Crystal Lake who basically get butchered by the members of the Voorhees family, mostly Jason. I love the films, but when you think about it, part of the thing I like about the films is the ridiculousness of them. I mean, what kind of stupid people wouldn't notice a massive, heavily built, hockey mask wearing psychopath with weapons who walks really slowly, stalking them? How would you not notice this guy? How would you allow yourself to be snuck up upon by this enormous lumbering guy? He's not exactly the most sneaky of people, is he? Okay, so let's get straight to the comparison. So the NES game was a survival horror game of sorts. It was published by LGN and developed by Japanese developer Atlus and was released in February of 1989. It was supposed to be a game movie adaptation. I mean, sure, it's set in Camp Crystal Lake. Yeah, you play as various counsellors trying to save children from Jason Voorhees, but this is about where the similarities end. So the Xbox One game, again, is a kind of survival horror game developed by Ilphonic and published by Gun Media. It was released in May of 2017 digitally, and then later on in October 2017 as a physical release for Xbox One, PS4 and PC. Let's compare the gameplay. So the NES game, players control one of 6 camp counsellors, each with varying levels of speed, rowing and jumping ability, in a side-scrolling perspective. The counsellors start with an arcing rock attack, which is amazing by the way. The goal is to find and defeat Jason 3 times. Along the way, the player will find cabins, lake, caves and a wooded area, and attacked by enemies such as crows, wolves and zombies. Lots and lots and lots of zombies. A timed alarm appears at certain intervals requiring the player to find Jason before he kills one or more children or another counsellor. Using the map, the player navigates their way to Jason or switch to a counsellor being attacked. The map is really not useful at all. Jason can attack you on paths or inside a cabin in a similar way to the game Punch-Out. The objective of the game is to survive for 3 days and 3 nights while looking to find and kill Jason. Jason's mother also makes an appearance, but as a giant floating Medusa type head thing. Yeah. So the Xbox One game, on the other hand, is a semi-open world reconstruction of Camp Crystal Lake and is played in third person. The game is set in the mid-1980s, so it's accurate to the movies. It is also an asymmetrical multiplayer game with up to 8 players being involved at any one time.
One player controls that of Jason Voorhees. Yes, that's right, you can control Jason. His objective, obviously, is to kill as many counsellors as possible. Playing as Jason grants many special abilities, which, as a nice touch, kind of explains a few things from the movies as to how Jason does what he does, and is seemingly unstoppable. The remaining players control the counsellors. The objective as a counsellor is to escape from the camp or to survive until the time runs out. Jason can be defeated with an epic win condition that requires teamwork and planning and is difficult to perform. Most of the enjoyment from this game does come from playing as Jason. The counsellors are not so good. Your survival options are that you can escape with the authorities, you can radio for Tommy Jarvis, escape in the car, escape in a boat, or survive the night. A player may also take control of Tommy Jarvis, who becomes playable when certain conditions are met, and one of the players that previously controlled a counsellor that died is randomly chosen to be Tommy. Maps in the game are based on the locations from the first 5 movies: Camp Crystal Lake from the first film, Packanack Lodge from the second film, Higgins Haven from the third film, Jarvis House from the fourth film, and Pinehurst from the fifth film. There are unlockable kills for Jason and clothes and items for counsellors. Okay, let's move on to soundtrack and music. So the NES game, the music is repetitive and annoying, completely unrelated to the movies. It is chiptune music for 8-bit consoles, obviously they were limited at the time, but it is very repetitive and very annoying. The Xbox One game, on the other hand, has a soundtrack created by Harry Manfredini, who created the original soundtrack for the movies. For me, this is a great touch and shows attention to detail for the subject matter. Also, music from Crazy Licks, a Swedish glam metal band, and 80s punk group Misfits appear in the game. Also, the sound effects used are fantastic, with the and whatnot. Okay, graphics and presentation. So the NES game, obviously comparing the graphics of the two games, you have to take into consideration the huge time gap between these two, and the obvious limitations the NES game had on the 8-bit machine. The graphics overall are pretty good, with there being far worse looking games on the system at the time, but I do question the colour choice for Jason. At the time, why would you think it was a good idea to make the scary serial killer purple and turquoise? I mean, sure, now I do like the look of him, mainly down to nostalgia and it being quite quirky, but surely when making a serious video game at the time about a ruthless, relentless murderer, the technology then, they would have been able to make him with like a grey jumpsuit and a white mask, which would be somewhat more accurate to the source material. Now obviously the graphics are going to be 1,000 times better on the Xbox One, that's a given, but what I like most about what they did with this game is the accuracy and attention to detail put into it, making it very close to actually looking like the movies. Okay, characters. So on the NES game you get to choose 6 generic random counsellors. I don't think any of these are from movies or anything. You've got 1 purple and turquoise Jason and a Medusa head Mrs. Voorhees. In the Xbox One game we've got 13 playable counsellors. Most of these were made just for the game, but 2 came from the movie Part 3, which was Sheldon, Shelley Finkelstein and Fox. Also playable is Tommy Jarvis, the protagonist of the 4th, 5th and 6th films. And also, Mrs. Voorhees' head also makes an appearance in a much more realistic way, and her voice is also heard throughout playing as Jason.
Make them remember what they did to us, Jason.
Okay, so which is better? Which one wins, modern or retro in this video? So in this one, I have to give it to the Xbox One, the modern game. It's definitely the winner. I mean, the NES game is regarded as one of the worst games of all time by some critics. I feel that's slightly harsh, but that's just probably my nostalgia talking. I do like a lot of the quirkiness of the NES game. But the Xbox One game wins here. It's not perfect, and since its release has been buggy, but the love shown by the developers in making this game and the feeling of playing as Jason Voorhees just pulls at the heartstrings of this horror nerd and Friday the 13th fanboy.